We're having open and honest conversations about mental health and well-being. We should talk about it with Maira and Sari on Wave Now.
Good Monday morning. I'm Maira Ansari here with Dr. Stephen Taylor, here to talk about We Should Talk About It. Dr. Taylor is a psychiatrist here at U of L Peace Hospital and joins me here for this podcast here because we should talk about it. And today we're talking about anger. You all may feel it often. Maybe a lot. And so is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? We want to talk about it and have a real conversation about how you handle that emotion. First of all, there's nothing wrong in feeling angry sometimes, right?
Well, that's right. As I was coming up here today, I was thinking about anger. It's a very complicated emotion because anger is both something we feel as an emotion, but it's also something we think about as a defense that protects us from feeling other things that can be more painful, frustrating, scary, make us feel more vulnerable. And so anger can sometimes serve as a defense. So that makes it kind of a complicated feeling. And sometimes we can be angry and not even really be aware that we're angry. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times have you talked to somebody who's got their finger in your face?
Oh, yeah.
And they're being aggressive and they're in your personal space and you're backing up and you say, "What are you angry about?" And they say, "I'm not angry."
Yeah.
It's
people
like,
don't even realize how they're coming off.
Right, exactly.
And I think a place where we see that play out all the time is social media.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Do you think social media has made us a more, number one, are we, in your opinion, are we an angry society, or how has social media complicated that?
I think that anger is a complicated thing to feel. It's a complicated thing to deal with. And so, are we more angry now than we've ever been as human beings? I don't think so. But maybe it's more apparent because of social media. That makes it such an easier vehicle for expressing it. Mm-hmm. Or that it can get expressed in unconscious ways, but those of us reading posts can see it. Mm-hmm. How often have you been checking social media and you see these posts from people you know or people you don't know that's in all caps, or it seems pretty aggressive, and you try to sort of speak to the aggression, and it's like, well, I'm not angry, I'm just trying to get my point across, but it feels aggressive, it feels angry. Mm-hmm. So I think it's one of those things that it is hard for us to hold on to be able to experience in some way, and to have a meaningful conversation about.
And having a meaningful conversation, I think, is the golden ticket when it comes to anger, because, at some point, of course, we've all been there where our anger takes over us, and maybe we've said or done something that we later will regret.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think part of it is being aware of it within ourselves, that we're angry. If we're trying to hold it back, or we're denying it, or we're just not really letting ourselves express it, then I think it can boil over and sort of come out all of a sudden. It's like, oh, what was that? Because we weren't paying that much attention to it as it was sort of coming on. I think if we all were really thinking about it, feeling it, and kind of staying connected to it, I think we could feel the subtlety in it a lot more, and we'd be a little more aware of it as it's coming on.
How do you deal with that anger? I had an incident over the weekend. It was a busy weekend, and I got angry about something. My husband said something to me, and let's just say it, and I was so angry. And then I threw the spoon down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to walk outside. I'm going to go for a walk. Mm-hmm. I'm going to cool down, and I'm going to let it go by the time I get into the door, right? We'll all have to find something to not say something that will
right, exactly.
complicate things.
Well, that is one way to deal with it, right? Just give yourself a timeout. We give kids time out all the time. You're in timeout.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
So you just go be by yourself for a little while and cool down. And I think in some ways we do that with ourselves. I think that's a very reasonable way to deal with being angry. What you did, go for a walk.
Yeah.
And walking is healthy. And that is a good thing that you can do for it. I was thinking as you were talking about being angry at your husband.
He's going to hate me for this.
Right. So you sort of become, I'm sorry about that.
Sorry.
But being angry at someone, or your husband in this case, that I think we sometimes I think we get anger sort of wrapped up into other feelings that could be constructive, like our drive, just our aggressive drive, our competitive drive, our drive to create and be innovative and do things. You know, that drive that sort of makes us as human beings want to be productive and constructive. I think sometimes anger and that feeling get wrapped up into each other. And I think sometimes when anger gets suppressed, somebody's just, I'm not going to let myself get angry, and I'm going to focus on just kind of being sort of zen all the time and never feel myself being mad. That with that, all of that other creative energy can get shut down too.
Interesting.
So I think those things are connected, and I think if we just try to shut down anger, we start closing ourselves off.
I was talking to a dear friend, Erlene Grice Owens, this weekend, and she wrote a blog about, sometimes you have to embrace that anger. And, something horrible happened. Let's say, for example, the shooting in Uvalde.
Yeah.
I'm angry about it.
Of course.
You should feel angry about it.
Right.
What are we going to do with this anger?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very good point. And especially this past weekend with more gun violence.
Absolutely.
The fact that this is something that's just sort of in our society, it becomes something that we really need to be able to talk about, that we also need to be able to hold on to and experience without feeling like it's going to destroy us. I think a lot of times what happens with feelings of anger and people feeling angry is there's this worry that it's going to be destructive. If I'm angry, I'm going to destroy something. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to destroy myself. I'm going to destroy my kitchen, whatever. And so it makes us suppress it or try to discharge it or whatever, and not be able to hold on to it, to experience it in some way, and to be able to make something meaningful from it. So we can make something meaningful from being angry about kids being shot.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's where you can bring change. Have conversations like this.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's absolutely true.
If you have a question for Dr. Taylor, I would love for you to put it here on social media, and we'll try to get to it. And maybe if you're struggling with anger, what do you do? Or, what are signs, Dr. Taylor, that anger is maybe out of control? What should folks do about that? Somebody actually just posted a question. Thank you. Andrea All, she said, are boundaries being considered anger? Is standing up for yourself being considered anger? That's a really good question.
That's an excellent question. I think that question kind of goes towards what I think I was saying a moment ago about our I'm going to say aggressive drive, and what I mean by that is our urge to be constructive, to do things, to be innovative, to be creative. You have a kind of an aggressive drive as a reporter, right? You're driven to do this.
Absolutely.
You want people to hear you, and you're going to make sure you're being heard.
Absolutely.
And if you're not being heard, you're going to make them hear you.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's a very powerful, constructive drive. And I think it kind of gets us towards the question about boundaries, and are boundaries considered anger? Within that, you're also protecting your own boundaries. I'm protecting mine. We have our personal boundaries. We keep ourselves protected and safe. And in our work environments, we may be working in situations where there could be harassment. There can be all kinds of things in the places that we work. And we use that kind of aggressiveness to protect ourselves in those environments. If we just shut down and become passive, that's when we can be in danger of something being harmful or hurtful for us.
Because your anger can bring something positive too. And also your anger can bring something negative as well. So you just have to kind of patrol your own feelings and your own emotions and keep yourself in check.
Yeah, I think one's capacity to tolerate that feeling of anger has a lot to do with how it gets channeled. If it becomes destructive, a person who can't tolerate feeling angry is going to take it out on whoever's around them to make themselves feel better.
Absolutely.
Right? That becomes a way to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be even more subtle than that. I was thinking about, just kind of in a generic way, work with a patient who really struggles with being angry, and in a session was talking about things that was making me feel angry. I was beginning to get angry, right? And I was thinking, that maybe the wish was for me to be mad enough so that I would do something that made them feel better, so they'd stop being angry. I mean, you think about kids. I mean, in some way, I think kids kind of do that with parents too, right?
Yeah.
If they kind of stir mom and dad up and they get mad enough, they might do something to make things better, and then they won't be mad anymore. So in a way, that's an example of how our own anger can be intolerable. So we can sort of provoke somebody else to do something about it. And that happens, I think, socially a lot.
So this is a big question, and I feel like I may be walking into the lion's den with this one. But, you know, sometimes are women and men perceived differently with their anger? Like, you're just an angry woman, you know?
Exactly.
You know, or are men justified in their anger?
Right.
You know, are women supposed to be, you know, keep yourself in check?
You know, we could have show after show talking about this because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think women and men do experience this differently. I think some of it is cultural, some of it is social. You know, I think there is a tendency for men to think of women as being more emotional and themselves being more reserved. And yet I think men sort of keep anger as their own. It's like it belongs to them. You're going to feel all that other stuff for me.
Interesting.
But I'll get mad. And if you get mad, you're taking something away from me that's supposed to be mine. I think that's kind of in there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
culture
right?
and our, you know, how we are as a society plays into all of that.
All those tears and things you keep. I'm not going to feel any of that. But I get to get mad.
Interesting.
And if you're angry, well, you're just a hysterical woman or whatever. But if I'm angry, it's like, oh, what a strong, I'm John Wayne.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think there is something cultural about that. And it is something we need to get rid of.
Absolutely. So, you know, at what point do you realize, Dr. Taylor, okay, maybe my anger is unhealthy. Maybe I'm spilling my anger onto everybody and I'm becoming a toxic person.
Right.
Because we've all been around that person where it's just unhealthy.
That can be a hard one to realize for ourselves. It's good to have a group around us who can sort of give us feedback. You know, what's happening? How are people around us feeling being with us? And it's important to be able to get that feedback. That feedback is important because I may not know. I may not know that I'm not holding on to my anger or that I'm trying to make you deal with it instead of me. But if I can hear you giving me feedback about it and I can take that in, then I can do something with it. I think so. That's the first piece I think that's important. Okay.
Andrea had another part to her question that is really good. Is passion being considered anger? That's a really good point.
And I think that's right in the heart of what we're talking about. You know, there are all these other ways we as human beings are driven for passion, for competition, to be master things. Mastery is a thing that we're driven to do as human beings. You know, you want to be good at your job.
Sure.
Maybe you want to be the best at your job. You know, maybe you want to be the best in the city. Maybe you want to be the best in the state. Maybe you want to get national attention. Those are all ways that we do our work that we are driven to do. And those are not necessarily unhealthy things in and of themselves. And passion, I think, fits in that. You know, passion for work, passion for another person.
Passion for a social cause.
Absolutely. Passion for ourselves, you know, passion about what's happening in our society now, passion about what happened in Uvalde, Texas. You know, all these things are ways that our passion can be engaged and directed. Those are not necessarily negative things.
So, what do you do if you start to recognize, or when people start to say, hey, this is turning really negative for you. You're not in a healthy space. What do you do? Talk to somebody?
Yeah, I think talking's important. You're always going to hear me say that.
I know, but right? It is.
I think it is. I think we say it a lot because it is so important. Yeah, you know, if we find ourselves having negative outcomes in spite of just kind of doing the same thing over and over again and getting negative outcomes for it, it ought to be a red flag for us that we need to do something different.
Absolutely.
Something isn't working.
So if you're having thoughts of harming yourself or someone else, that is absolutely not the direction that you want to go to.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and if you find yourself in that position, that's certainly a time to reach out.
We have another question here. If you don't agree with something, whether it's social, political, or whatever it may be, how do you get your point across and not become in an angry state about it? Or should you, do you realize, okay, everybody has different opinions and outlooks on things. I may not agree with you. It did upset me. It did anger me. How do you deal with that emotion?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the question here about political party and derivatives therein and divisions and animosity, those kind of fit in a little bit to what we were talking about. I'm going to have my own feelings, and if I really can't tolerate them, I may try to provoke you into having those feelings so that either I'm not dealing with it anymore or you're going to go out and do something about it. Or if I feel guilt or shame about something my group has done, I may accuse your group of doing it so that it deflects the look at me. I'm not going to get punished. What do we feel with shame and guilt? With shame and guilt, we feel like we're going to get punished. I've done something bad, so I'm going to get in trouble unless I can get you guys to focus on this person over here, who's so much worse than me, and then all of a sudden now I'm in the clear. And so that kind of thing happens a lot. And it's not just about anger, it's about any feeling we have a hard time tolerating.
Trying to think of what this has been really insightful, because I think we automatically think anger is bad. Anger is not always bad. Anger can be good. It depends on how you process it.
Right, exactly. Somebody breaks into my house and steals all my stuff. I'm going to be angry
Absolutely.
about it. That was my stuff.
Yeah.
I want my stuff back.
Yeah.
So that anger is not unjustifiable. So you're right. Anger in and of itself is not a problem. That's not something for us to be afraid to feel. It could be because something has happened that makes us angry. It could also be that it's hiding some other feeling that we just can't tolerate feeling. And it would be important to understand what those feelings are as a way to help us unravel anger. Because if it's just an emotional expression of something, then that's a thing to be dealt with in and of itself. But if it's a defense for something that's even harder for us to tolerate, if we remove it, now we're exposed to something that's even harder for us to deal with. And so that's why talking about these things is so important, to understand what's behind it.
What do you say to somebody who says, Dr. Taylor, I feel angry all the time?
There's a reason for that. Excuse me, my friend.
You're fine. You're fine.
We're in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's allergy season.
Yeah, it's allergy season. Sorry about that.
So if someone feels angry all the time, what do you do with that?
Yeah, that's that means something. Let's talk about why you're angry all the time.
Yeah.
There's probably a reason for it. And to sort of unravel what those things are. Is it circumstances? Is it stuff that's going on? Is it being treated unfairly? Why does it feel like the treatment is unfair? And it may be that a person is being treated unfairly. There's reality and fantasy going on in our minds all the time, right? We have what we really experience and perceive, and then we have what's kind of in our imagination, what we think is going on.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We all have that.
Yeah.
We meet somebody for the first time, and we're meeting them as the person they are in the moment, but they may remind us of somebody, and they may remind us of somebody even if we're not consciously registering it.
Or you're interpreting something they say or do, and it's really not meant that way. I'm guilty of that all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in face-to-face interactions, it's easy to clear those things up. On social media, it can just sort of percolate and just sort of boil and boil.
Yeah.
I
do read a lot of comments that you all, people post, or you see, comments. And, I think people do let things kind of, you may not have that intention, but you have, ignited something in someone, and now it's explosive, and someone's coming at somebody with this, and it's just... it just kind of snowballs into something big.
Exactly. And just not understanding what the lingo is.
Yeah.
So I was telling you this little joke story, and I'll just kind of...
I love it.
I'm going to water this down really, really, really generically so you know who it is. But I know someone who was trying to sort of be with it with their kids and using the letters WTF, which we all
know that.
We can't say that one on the air. But she thought it meant why the face. That seems innocent, but it was not being talked out. So it was going for weeks and weeks.
WTF.
All over the place, right? I mean, it was everywhere. And, you know, there's this, the kids are finally saying, Mom. What?
I don't think you know what that means, Mom.
And she didn't, you know, right? So for weeks, this is on social media, but if it's in a face-to-face interaction, it's cleared up right away.
Yeah.
So I think these things can linger and they can percolate in social media because we are not engaged like you and I are here, and that makes so much difference.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to give each other grace too, and be offer forgiveness and kindness, and just sometimes the anger that we are holding on to just really isn't worth it, you know?
Exactly. And that it's not terrible in and of itself, and it's something that we can make use of.
Another person wrote, Craig wrote, we're a divided nation. Politicians and media strive to keep us divided, and that's where the anger stems from. That's his opinion on that. But we are very much sometimes a very divided society and community. So how do we bond together for the greater good? I know that's a big question too.
It is a big question, but I think part of the way I think about it is tribalism. Right? We all have our tribes, and we all have our groups that we sort of find solace and safety in. And if our tendency is to just kind of go circle up the wagons with our group and let them go circle up the wagons with their group, then it's going to be kind of hard for us to meet in the middle and have a dialogue and to be able to talk. But if I can come to you to talk to you about something and be willing to be moved or changed by what you have to say, and if you come with the same idea, we both have beliefs, we both have our ideas of the way the world is supposed to be, but if we can meet in the middle and talk about those differences and have some kind of, we can come to something new. That can happen. Yeah. That's possible. But if we're entrenched in our own groups.
And you've got the earmuffs on and you're not listening.
Yeah, then I just hear, all I hear you saying is wrong, 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 wrong. And then I'll come back and tell you the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's not really a dialogue.
No, having an open conversation and listening offers so many different perspectives, I think. I didn't see it that way. I didn't interpret it that way. Right. That's how I came off, really. Yeah,
I think that's right. And I think there's a tendency sometimes for us to, I keep smacking my mic.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Good. It's all good.
I hope everybody's not like, oh my God, taking their headphones off. I think, I think it's important for us to be able to come together and talk in that kind of open way. If we can't, and it's a very complicated world. I don't think that news media or politicians are all trying to divide the world and make the world a divided place. Those things happen within those arenas, but I don't think that's their specific goal or intention. And my wife was part of the Crusade for Children's for a while, and they would do that morning show. I'm not even going to be able to think of it now, but there was a show they do in the mornings, and she was talking to somebody. They had a very different view about gun rights, and so it was a very heated conversation. But she said, I understand that your wish is to be able to protect your family. And he stopped for a moment and looked back at her and said, nobody from your side has ever said that to me before. And, they were able at that point to have a real conversation about it. Yeah. Because they got out of their trenches and they were able to sort of meet in the middle and talk about it. And I think that's the goal. I think that's the goal for how we deal with our anger.
How do you stay cool, calm, and collective when you are in that moment having that conversation and you don't agree with what someone is saying? You do feel wrong. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
That is a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's, to be able to tolerate feeling it, right? I mean, the first thing I have to have is the capacity to just be mad and be able to tolerate being mad. And then from that, I can do something functional. And I can use it as energy to help me work and talk.
I know all the parents out there, I know that there's times where you're like, oh my goodness, my kids just made me so angry. I cannot believe they did this. Feeling those emotions. I know we love our kids, but it's normal to feel really angry at them sometimes.
Well, of course. There was a famous psychoanalyst early in the psychoanalytic world named D.W. Winnicott. So Winnicott's famous expression, he had a bunch of things that were kind of famous buzzwords. One of them was the good enough mother, which I think is awesome. You know, moms and dads don't have to be perfect. They just have to be good enough. You know, because his idea was, you know, kids will grow and develop if you can create what he called the optimum level of frustration, which I love that, which is sort of like saying, well, you know, you're going to fail your kids. Don't fail them miserably so that they're overstimulated and fail to develop. But don't make it perfect for them either. Because if the world is perfect for kids, they won't grow. They won't develop. So they have to be frustrated.
Absolutely.
So part of our frustration as parents is we're not going to be good parents if we're not frustrated. We have to be frustrated. It's part of being a parent.
Yeah.
And part of loving your kid is to be mad at them.
I was really mad at my daughter this weekend. Oh, this is TMI. We were in a bouncy house together, and she didn't want me to get out, and she bit me. And I was like,
Oh my God.
why would you bite me? Like, of all the things to do, I was so angry at her. I was like, I cannot believe that was like the logical thing for you to do is to bite me.
How was this a choice?
No. What made you think that that was going to make me want to stay with you at this moment? So kids do stuff, and we get angry about it, you know, and I had a conversation with her. Like, at no point do you bite anyone. That's just not allowed.
I think that one of the problems with anger is it can lead to this feeling, well, that must mean that I don't love this person. You know, a parent could be really angry at their kid, and they could be like feeling guilty and shameful, like, oh, I must not love my kid. It's like, well, of course you love your kid, but you're going to be angry at them.
Yeah.
You know, competition with a friend is like they're kind of like, they couldn't be like a sibling to you if you weren't competing with them, right? We compete with our siblings. So you've got a really good friend and somebody says, man, you guys really compete with each other. Well, of course we do. We're like sisters.
Yeah.
You know, we're like siblings.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, like I wanted her to know, like, I'm angry because you hurt me. And I don't want you to do this again, you know, to anyone. But I'm angry at you because I hold you to a higher standard.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. I love this conversation because I think this is relatable for so many people.
Well, it's because we're human beings.
Absolutely. So we need to talk about it. We should talk about it. And these are things that we, you know, sometimes we think that they're bad things, these emotions that we feel, but they're normal. And you should talk about it if you feel like, okay, maybe I'm really angry a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then let's find out why.
Yeah, let's find out why. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. I'm Myra Ansari with Dr. Stephen Taylor from U of L Peace Hospital. Thanks so much.